This is Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in Sacramento today. We're joined by Chris Holden. He is the majority leader in the California State Assembly. And in a prior existence, you owned a Subway franchise, I understand.
I did.
And you, like many Californians, have seen franchising as a way to start a small business with a lot of support behind you.
Yes.
Talk to us about your personal experience and what you've heard from other franchisees like yourself.
Well, you know, for a lot of small business owners, it's an opportunity to get in, operate a business,
Right.
and have some control because you're not necessarily going out and establishing market share. You're working with a franchise that's out there doing national marketing on your behalf, and you have a chance to really have a product that's tested and to be able to be in a position to hopefully make some money.
Sure.
It's not always the case, but it's important to.
But we know that in contractual situations, there can be positions of power
Right.
that can make it difficult for the franchisee to operate as he or she sees best.
Right.
And so over the last few years, actually, you have been working in the legislature with business interests to try to tighten California laws really to the benefit of both parties, not just the franchisees.
That's right. That's right. I think, quite frankly, it was looking at an opportunity to see where you could balance the scales a little bit more than they were previously. I think the franchisors were always in a stronger position to be able to put additional pressure on the franchisee to invest more money at different times, to be in a position to meet compliance on certain areas that may be a marginal call and puts pressure on the operations.
Let me ask you, in your experience, or did you hear through this process that certain franchisors could get very ticky-tack about contractual requirements and then use that as a way to cancel the contract, and as a result, all the equity put in up front was gone?
That's right. We've heard from a number of different operators from a variety of different franchise operations. 7-Eleven, I think, was one, excuse me, that had a lawsuit going that was challenging some of the practices that were being imposed upon them. And, you know, they were basically having their franchise taken away. They had maybe put hundreds of thousands of dollars of investment into the operation, and they couldn't get their money out. And that we thought was unfair. We needed to address it in a way where at least there was equity. If you have an operator who is not meeting the appropriate standards, they've been given an opportunity to cure and correct, and if that wasn't, they didn't get to where they needed to be, then the franchise or certainly had the right to protect that brand, but the franchisee had a right not to basically have all of their life savings lost at the whim.
So last year, I know you were working on this issue. I believe a bill got out, but wound up being vetoed by the governor.
Right.
So this year, you came back with some of your friends and allies on both sides to try to tighten up the language in such a way that the governor will be on board. The bill's marching through the legislature, heading towards the governor.
Right.
Do you feel as if you found the secret sauce?
I think we have. I think it was very important to make sure that the governor wanted to see that there was an opportunity to try to work towards building consensus, and we did that. The International Franchise Association, which was really strongly against this initiative the last time around, has now signed off on the proposal. We have others that have been sort of shaky in the past, but are now working with us. The petroleum industry, which had some concerns because, you know, they have their petroleum side, but in some cases they have the convenience store part of it. And it was always our belief that that was treated as one franchise operation under the petroleum operation or standards. So that's controlled by the federal government, federal standards. So we are separating that out and making it very clear. But with that kind of clarity, I think it's looking like we're getting unanimous support.
And there was a question about the return of equity.
Right.
So under prior law, if there was a breach by the franchisee, the equity was forfeited or could be forfeited?
It could be forfeited.
Wow.
They could take the assets, they could seize it, and basically the franchisee is left penniless in many instances.
And so under the proposed legislation, the equity is not forfeited no matter what, or it's a little more textured?
There's an opportunity for there to be some recapture of investment.
When appropriate.
When appropriate. And
now, what about the question of violations? Because I understand you're looking to avoid ticky-tack violations resulting in a default.
Right.
But what's a ticky-tack violation versus a significant violation?
Well, I think it's also the period of operating, giving them an opportunity to cure. Yeah. So when they are told that they are in violation, that they have an appropriate period of time to cure the violation or bring it back into compliance. And I think that's where we were giving them a little bit more time to do that, and that there was greater communication amongst the franchisor and franchisees through that process. Now, this bill also takes in really a lot of different successes that we've seen in states throughout the country. And so some of the standards that we've drawn upon have been tested in other states. And we are very hopeful that this bill will pass and then will be signed by the governor. It will be the strongest franchise bill in the country.
But to protect both interests, is that right?
To protect both interests. It's not looking to really put franchisees in a superior position, but it is recognizing that up until this point, they have been in an inferior position. And I think that, so getting a balance, finding the equilibrium, that's what our efforts have been about, and I think we've been able to accomplish that in a meaningful way.
I want to talk about this summer, which is quickly coming to an end.
Yes.
Usually summer is a quiet time in Sacramento, relatively speaking. Not this summer. We had the governor call 2 special sessions, one focused on transportation, one focused on health care, without getting too much into the weeds on those, because we could, but let's not for now, because we're not sure where they're going. Talk to me about how that happened. I mean, you're the majority leader. How did that impact your workflow, your members' workflow? Because it hasn't happened in a long time, I think.
You know, it was, the governor wanted to put focus on 2 important areas, certainly transportation and healthcare. And I think in his earlier State of the State back in January, he talked about investing and improving the infrastructure of the state's transportation network and roads and highways. And so we couldn't really get to a sweet spot in the budget itself.
And let me ask you about that, because your friends on the Republican side of the aisle have said, look, we're all for these fixes, or getting to the fix, but they felt as if it should have been done in the budget and not through special session.
Well, and that's fair, but I think it also recognizes that it's a big issue, and big issues sometimes require additional transparency, conversation, reaching out to constituencies that are throughout the state, that this is not just an inside baseball decision.
And why does a special session, by definition, create the environment whereby there's more transparency, more accessibility, more productivity?
Well, it creates certainly more focus, and certainly the nature of the conversations that will be going forward. We have our transportation chair, Jim Frazier, who's been making his way throughout the state. The speaker is weighing in on this. So it gives us an opportunity in the pro tem to start honing in on priorities, start to take some time to gather that feedback from constituencies throughout the state. So we start to formulate a game plan. That game plan gets memorialized into a set of priorities, and those priorities then, with the right kind of support, will then, with the governor's blessing, maybe find its way into a bill.
At the same time, both with regard to healthcare and transportation, we're looking at the possibility of taxes and fees. We still have a constitutional amendment which requires a 2/3 vote. That will require some of your friends on the Republican side to jump on board. At this point, I'm not clear that they're willing to jump on board. What do you do under that scenario?
Well, look, the special session does not have to end at the end of regular session. So it can continue on beyond the end of session. But I think that it's an investment that we have to really look at very soberly. We have failing infrastructure throughout the state, and we either have to get to a place where we're willing to invest, and that does require, in this instance, to maybe look at some kind of a fee adjustment or revenue enhancement, and by doing that, it's about the future. If we don't take care of it now, we're going to be in worse shape down the road.
His name is Chris Holden. He is the majority leader in the California State Assembly. My name is Brad Pomerance. In Sacramento, you are watching Local Edition.